I'll never forget it. Actually, Sam Elliott gave me a pair of heart ruby earrings, and I still have them to this day.
Oh my gosh, that is so, because I was going to ask what it was like having him play your father. I mean, he's so iconic and it's gut wrenching. Did you understand who he was, or were you just like, okay, we're going to do this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Sam Elliott in my family for sure. I mean, my mama loved Sam Elliott, and my mom too. I mean, whenever Sam Elliott was around, all of the women had their makeup on and their hair done. And as a kid, I definitely noticed that he had a real appeal to all of the women on the set for sure. Yeah. And, I think I had a sense that I was working with these Hollywood legends. Mm-hmm. But with Sam, he's a method actor. And so in that character, he and my character have a really tense relationship, and it's a very authentic relationship, about a family who's down on their luck, who are grieving the loss of their mother and wife, and, who are struggling with the family farm. I mean, it's a really dark premise for a holiday Christmas movie. And the relationship that people saw on the screen between Sam and I, it was authentic, because from day one, he acted like my dad, who was really tough on me. And if I messed up, he was relentless as, somebody who was supporting me to rise to the occasion in that role. And I mean, I remember after the fact, I was doing some media and somebody asked me what it was like working with Sam Elliott. And it was on a late night show. Yeah. I think I said something like, he was really tough on me and he was kind of gruff. And my mom was like, don't say that to people. We don't want people to think that you were abused. But I mean, and the truth is, definitely the child labor laws were super lax on the set, because I was working all hours of the day. But I also loved every second of it. I loved Sam. I loved working on the set. I was the perfect person for that job, because I felt like that character was me. And I really felt such deep, I have to this day such love for the people that I had the chance to work with in the film, including Abe Vigoda and Cloris Leachman, who, passed away recently. And certainly, and I get to talk to Sam every now and then. And it really, it's like coming home.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And that is so sweet, though, then, he gave you these earrings. That's very fatherly. And, did you understand, because you were so professional as an actress then, even though you were a little kid, did you really comprehend, okay, this is a method? Or were you a little bit like, okay, he's my dad on set?
I don't think I knew what I guess I did. Someone explained to me what method acting was. Okay. So I really, because Cloris also stayed in character with me. So and her character was supposed to be way crazier than it came off in the movie. There was this whole subplot with her that got cut on the editing room floor about her murdering her husband and keeping her bones in the attic and all of this stuff. And so she was supposed to be really crazy, which she conveys without all of that backstory. Yeah. It comes through.
Yeah, for sure.
Way of being, but she was like that with me on the set too.
Interesting. Aw.
He's ready for his close-up.
Oh, what a sweetie. Oh my gosh, how cute. But that is fascinating, though, how, as a little kid and also as a filmmaker now, looking back, I watch it every year. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the effects. Or are they effects with Prancer? What was that like?
I remember they added this sort of star and Santa's sleigh at the very end after the fact. And that was very high tech for the time, 1989. I mean, everything was still on film. It was a different world for movie making. That was the olden days back when, people actually cut tape.
Yes.
And so I do remember seeing but the stunts were real stunts. I mean, I did a lot of my own stunts. I fell from the tree. I slid on the sled underneath the fence. When Cloris was chasing me down the hill, I sled down the hill. There was a lot of support there. We had snowmobiles attached to the sled. So it wasn't like I was just, flying down the hill. It was all I felt very safe
Okay.
every single thing that I did, even when I was hanging upside down from the tree, on a crane, and they were like lifting me up and down. There was never a time that it didn't feel like fun and like an adventure. The biggest challenge, and even with Sam being gruff and Cloris being crazy, on set, I loved every second of it. I just, I loved being with these incredible, they taught me so much of what I know around how to make a great movie. And I've carried all of those lessons that I learned from these Hollywood legends, including the director, John Hancock, and producer, Raffaele De Laurentiis. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like that whole experience set me on this pathway to make movies that make a difference. And that's what my whole world is about. It's like every little thing that made Prancer so magical, from the effects to the cast to the great story that was written by Greg, and then John allowing us to improvise on the set, which created all these really real moments between us. Yeah. It showed me how when you get it just right, that storytelling can touch people's hearts and it can change the world. And I saw that with Prancer. I saw, so many whole communities and families get so deeply moved by Prancer, being this family who is struggling and who finally find that human connection again after mm-hmm. all seems lost. And it just made me want to make films that could touch humanity in other ways, around not just family, but around our love for the environment and our love for our nation's first peoples, which has led us to the work we're doing today.
Yes, no, I definitely want to ask you about that. I do have to ask you about the reindeer, because, the movie kind of has that feel like E.T. did, that love with this forbidden creature, magical creature. What were you working with because you had a lot of moments with the reindeer? Mm-hmm. What were you working with then?
So there was a real reindeer. Her name was Boo. She was pregnant, and they chose Boo because pregnant reindeer keep their antlers longer. And as predicted, we ended up running over on our schedule. And the day after we stopped filming Prancer, Boo lost her antlers. Oh. And it was a huge, there were so many things we were afraid of. One was that I was going to lose my front tooth because it was barely hanging on by a thread. And two was that that Boo was going to either give birth or shed her antlers. And then, continuity for the film would be a real problem. So we worked, and I had a meeting with Boo in the very beginning, and right off the bat, she and I hit it off. I loved Boo. Boo loved me. She would let me touch her and hold her, walk with her on the lead. And she and I always had a really great relationship, even though she was under really stressful circumstances, looking back, now as an adult on that situation. But she and I did great. And then we also had a fake reindeer head that was they used, it was like a puppet. Okay. And so when I was sitting down reading to Prancer, they would actually bring Prancer in and I would read to the real Prancer, but then they would take Prancer out and then they would set up this mechanical puppet, and I would then do the scene again with a mechanical puppet. And you can really tell if you look closely at the film which one is the real deer and which one is the mechanical one.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess I watch it, because it's been around for so long. So I sort of watch it through these magical eyes. And I was looking, I'm like, they did a great job with the, CG. There's no CGI. But
that was a real deer. And I was feeding her. And I mean, there was a lot of people who were very nervous about the amount of stunts that I was doing, and also working with this live animal. I loved every second of it. My mom was very open about it. So we weren't being too rigid about my participation in it. But at one point, Boo did actually have, she kind of lost it on set during one of the scenes, and she bucked one of the grip's backs, and he was injured pretty badly on set by Boo. But it didn't faze me. I kept working with her and leading her around, and, it was fine.
Oh my gosh, that makes it even more magical. I kind of feel like that there's a real reindeer there. Now, did you keep your tooth?
I did. Yes, I kept my tooth until the very end, indeed. Okay. And then after that, they were all gone. So the timing of it all worked out just perfectly.
It did. I feel like there's a lot of parallel with you and like Drew Barrymore and E.T., because I think there was a whole situation with her teeth as well.
Yes. Well, they were talking about like putting a prosthetic tooth in, and they had I had to go to the, orthodontist. They were like ready on standby in case the tooth fell out. Cause we would work until 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. And then our call would be 4 or 5 a.m. So it wasn't like there was time. And I was in every scene, but I think 3 scenes in the film. So, we were constantly at work. So there wouldn't really have been time for me to go off and go to an orthodontist and have the whole implant put in. So they were just the whole time being super mindful of the time. And the biggest obstacle, I think I was going to say this earlier, was the cold. It was really the cold weather was, it was like sometimes 42 below zero with the wind chill factor. And I just remember my hands wouldn't work. I tried to like open a latch and I just couldn't do it take after take. I just couldn't open the door anymore. My body just wouldn't function. And, Jessica had not as nice warm clothes. Ariana Richards, who played her best friend, she was supposed to come from a wealthier family, so she had a warmer jacket and she had warmer mittens and a warmer hat. My character, who's not supposed to have a mom, who's supposed to come from a poorer family, unfortunately my wardrobe reflected that, and so I was out there in the cold and not properly dressed. And that was, looking back on all of the work and all of the most challenging moments, it was definitely the cold.
And where was this shot?
We shot primarily in Laporte, Indiana, which is also the hometown of John Hancock, the director.
Okay.
And we filmed on his family's farm. And what's so funny is I just filmed my first scripted film on my father's farm in Ohio. So I definitely was inspired by seeing how the community in Laporte came around Prancer. I mean, it really was a community event making Prancer, and we all felt a sense of ownership in that. And I even got a key to the city. There's Rebecca Harrell Day in Laporte, Indiana, April 2nd.
That's so great.
I'm sure they're out there celebrating with parades and fireworks, but the community really helped make the film possible. And then that was definitely what I experienced making my first scripted film, was that the community came together and made the film possible.
Oh, I love that. I just love that. Yeah, it is one of those, list of movies to watch. It's always on there for everybody. So it's cool to kind of hear, the inside baseball aspect of it. It is interesting you're talking about how cold it was. Speaking of important movies to make, climate change. I feel like, where do you think we are? I know that you really put a lot into your films. Do you feel like the awareness is there yet? Or do you think we got to just keep hammering through entertainment too, and documentaries?
I think that people are acutely aware of the factors of our weather. People are, whether doesn't matter what their political views are. I think even farmers will say, my dad's a farmer, we can all agree that the weather is changing and that human beings are playing a role in that. And, we've got carbon levels that, have to be brought down in order to stabilize the climate for the future. I don't think that people are in denial about that anymore. I think there's an agreement that we're in trouble. We're facing a real climate catastrophe unless we take action. And I think for most people, it's very paralyzing. So I don't think it's that people aren't aware of it. I think it's that people are trying to figure out what to do with that anxiety and that grief, because it doesn't seem like there's a pathway out of it. It's so overwhelming that it is paralyzing. And especially, I'm a mother, I have 2 young children, and I think about their future. And I'm extremely concerned. And, that's definitely what fuels me to do the kind of work that we do, and to make the types of films that we make. But I think the great news is that there is a solution. There is a way that we can stabilize the climate. And that's the message of what our films are all about. So my husband and I, we're working on our 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th films right now. And all of our films touch on this issue of that we can all play a role in protecting the planet and our future. And certainly when it comes to carbon in the atmosphere, we've made a film called Kiss the Ground that shows how we can draw down all of that legacy load of carbon and put it into healthy soil, and at the same time grow nutrient dense food that's good for our bodies, that's good for our planet, and it's also good for the farmer's pocketbook. So, it's a real win-win-win that we have ahead of us in terms of the way out. And I think as more people realize that there are solutions, then they'll be less afraid to face the big problems that we're currently having to deal with.
Right. No, I think you're exactly right, where they're just like, well, oh well, nothing I can do,
Right.
and then they just sort of turn off whatever. So
yeah, it's too much. It's too overwhelming for people to think that, like, what can I do? I'm just one small person. How am I, one small person, going to save the whole world? And it's funny because all of that question, and then like the action that can be taken from that, all of that reminds me of Jessica Riggs to an extent. Like, it doesn't matter what the problem is. Like, that this girl, she's got the conviction to deal with it. And so, I think we all just need a little bit more Jessica Riggs, because these problems, aren't too big, and there is something that each one of us can do. There's a role for each one of us to play in solving the climate change issue.
That's encouraging to hear, because, in this doom and gloom environment where, I live in Florida, so and it's very apparent down here, and it is very overwhelmingly frustrating when there's things that could be done that are not being done.
Well, and part of it is that this issue has become politicized, and people look at it like it's a political issue, and it's not. And farmers in the United States and all around the world are realizing that this is where we have our common ground, is around our soil. That's the thing that connects us all. And farmers are paying the biggest cost of anyone. We have a suicide epidemic in the United States with farmers, and the food that is being grown and dirt that's basically blowing in the wind. And the farmers' profits are going down, and the nutrition in our food is going up. And the biggest, scariest thing is that this land has the capacity to either emit carbon that will cause further climate chaos, or on this very land that we manage, that's within our control, we can change our practices to regenerative agriculture practices, which is what Kiss the Ground is about. And we can draw that carbon down into healthy soil. And we can do that anywhere in the world using the same regenerative practices. And in doing so, we can create these stabilized microclimates. So that's where each one of us plays a role, because it doesn't matter where you live. The more regenerative agriculture, the healthier the soil, the more stable the climate. They work hand in hand.
Yeah. Who needs to be putting this in? Like, is this something that you guys are talking to, the White House about? Okay.
Yeah. So the USDA, we made an education version of the film and a farmer version of Kiss the Ground. We reached over 1 billion people in the first 90 days. It's been shown in over 40,000 classrooms, like in-person screenings at schools, but that's, we think, only a tiny fraction of it. The USDA showed the film to the building wide to everyone in the USDA on Earth Day of this year. And as a result of Kiss the Ground, it was acknowledged by the congressional panel that they subsequently put together, and they announced, ultimately is $20 billion from the USDA for climate smart agriculture. And they're crediting the film Kiss the Ground as being the main key unifying tool that made that happen. So it just goes, films don't just touch hearts, they touch countries, they touch governments, they touch, whole education systems and whole farming communities. And so Kiss the Ground, did exactly what we hoped it would do. And it was used as a tool by our government to help put fairer practices in place that can help build soil.
Oh, I have chills. Yeah. That's amazing. That's wonderful. And then your other film, On Sacred Ground, it's interesting because when I saw it, and I remember when this all happened. What was that, 2015, 2016?
2016.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was shocking and upsetting. And then everything else happened and we all got distracted, and it's still happening. There's still
Well, it was 500 um, barrels of oil flowing per day, and now it's 1 million barrels of oil flowing per day through the Dakota Access Pipeline. So it's still flowing. People often confuse the Dakota Access Pipeline with the Keystone Pipeline, which the Biden administration did shut down. However, the Dakota Access Pipeline is at full throttle right now.
Wow.
And I think there's so many surprising things working on this project. And really what led us to this project was, there's nowhere where, environmental justice and Indigenous justice are tied. They're linked together. And whenever, and often when you see environmental injustice, you'll also see Indigenous sovereignty being trampled somewhere. And it was the human rights violations around the environment and our First Nations people that brought us to this issue. And I don't think people realize that, the Constitution backs these treaties that have been broken, that were upheld by the Supreme Court in the 1980s, that say that this land belongs to the Dakota people. And this is like, 2 states worth of land that, they've refused payment for, because according to our government, that land legally belongs to them. It just hasn't been returned to them yet. So that was a big eye-opening moment for us, because we realized a lot of people who really do believe in our Constitution, who often are more conservative in their political view, have way more aligned, I think, with the Indigenous sovereignty of these people than they realize. And so it's an opportunity to come to the mainstream with this film, with this message, not just have it be a fringe thing about some pipeline somewhere, but for the mainstream to understand that, this is a serious breach in our integrity as a nation. And until it's restored, we're not doing justice to the people who really can lead the way around so many of these environmental issues, like regenerative agriculture. Those practices are Indigenous agricultural practices. So, we've just ignored the voice of so many Indigenous people for so long, and it's time to give them the microphone. It's time to, listen to what they're saying. And ultimately, that's what led us to making this film.
Yeah, it's a really, really powerful film. And I do love how, your lead character, he does change and he does evolve once he sees what was going on. So
it was really important to us as a non-Indigenous filmmaker to tell the story from a really respectful perspective.
Yeah.
And so from the very beginning, we were speaking with elders and with tribal leaders and asking, what is the appropriate way for us to tell the story? And where we came to was, okay, we're going to tell the story from the perspective of a white male Republican war vet, with PTSD, who is also a journalist who goes to cover the Standing Rock oil pipeline protest from the oil company perspective, and then follow him on this journey as he goes there and he sees what's really happening on the ground, and then this healing and the transformation that takes place in him. And it was, as much as the film is about Dan and his journey, the idea is that as people watch the film, that we all go on this journey with him and we all learn new things. The film touches on some important issues like murdered and missing Indigenous women, children and men, broken treaties, of course, stopping the Dakota Access Pipeline. Just so many, and the truth of what happened at Standing Rock, which was really a violation of so many people's rights.
So it's seriously shocking. And I do hope it seems like people have become more in their bubble. I'm hoping that they can sort of look out of that bubble with their own beliefs and maybe open up to the journey that he went on. It is optimistic.
It was interesting to kind of like try to tread the line in the storytelling of how are we going to honor the Indigenous people that this issue touches and who, this issue really is about and for, while at the same time educating people who have no idea about this, and do it in a way that's respectful. And, my dad, who is a conservative farmer from Ohio, it's been an interesting journey with him because he's often my litmus test for for our movies about farming. He's a farmer, for this movie, when we did film it on his land, and sometimes he'd be like, so what is this scene about? What is it exactly that's going on here? And I think the film really succeeds at being accessible to people from any worldview, from any political view, being something that can really reach anyone wherever they're at, and hopefully engage them in a powerful and inspiring way to join this conversation around Indigenous sovereignty and human rights.
Yes, human rights are very big. I think that's a big topic. Well, before I let you go, on a fun note, I'm curious, what does your family do for the holidays? You have a couple little kids. Is Prancer on the menu? And do you guys do any kind of fun things every year?
Oh, yes. Prancer's definitely on the menu. I kind of have to I'm like, okay, you guys want to watch Prancer? My daughter's 8, so it's especially interesting for me now because she's the age that I was when I filmed the movie, and she looks so much like I looked, only she's got red hair and blue eyes. But she talks like me and she thinks like me, and so it's fascinating to see her watch the movie and take it in. And I think that she and I have a special relationship because I feel like she can really relate to me, not just who I am as her mom and as a grown woman, but I think that she gets a sense of who I was when I was a little girl. And that's really special. My son, he gets worried about me. He's 5. And so he will cry, when Sam is mean to be in the movie, and, he'll have to hide his face a little bit. It's still a little bit because it's me and it's confusing for him, and he wants to keep me safe. And so it's really, he'll basically just hug me through the whole thing. And my husband, he's funny. He's I kind of have to make him watch it, but 5 minutes in, he's crying. 5 minutes and he's glued. He's he can't be bothered,
That's great. I love that. I love that. Oh, and are there any family traditions you always do as well, just with the kids?
Well, we have our tree, and we, for our wedding, I took all of the used invitations and I made them into Christmas tree ornaments, and people wrote a blessing to us on our wedding day. And so every year at Christmas time, as I take out the ornaments, it's a blessing from all of the people that were at our wedding. And I get to read, 12 years later, what they wrote each year. And some of them have passed on, and some of them are divorced or, who moved away. And so it's just interesting to see, how time flies by. Certainly with Prancer, my gosh, how many years has it been? It's been, let's see, 89. So wow. So 30, 33, 32 years. It's been 32 years since Prancer came out. Yeah.
And it's still so enduring. It is in, that list. I know, it reminds me, it's like a Christmas Story, you're going to watch it and you're going to love it, and you see it every year, what's coming, but you're still sitting down and crying. So, I love that. I love the idea of the Christmas ornaments. Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, and I think also just Sam Elliott's performance and Cloris Leachman's performance. I mean, they're just so good.
Yeah.
And I know they often list me in there as giving a great performance, but I honestly was just being myself. That was just me. And I think some of the best acting isn't acting at all. It's just people being. Right. And so for me, me and Jessica, she's a part of me, and she's inspired me every single day. Her character, her resiliency, her spirit, her optimism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely all things that I learned from her that I carry with me.